Hello, Spookaroos! It is time for another ReMix episode, and if you are new to the show, and I know that a lot of you are, welcome. These are episodes that we have presented long ago. So far, these all date back from 2016, those faraway days where we could hang out and sit with people in the same room and sometimes even put our arms around them and stuff like that. Remember those days? This episode is no longer available on the Apple Podcast feed and maybe some of the other players, so we represent these episodes to give me a little bit of a break while I work on new episodes every other week. So this is a remix episode, but it's a really good one, so I hope that you will still listen and enjoy, because tonight we are talking with former frequent podcast guest Tom Cole about one of my favorite horror movies and one of my favorite comedies. It's really a horror movie, but there are several funny things in it, and that is American Werewolf in London. So if you haven't seen the movie, definitely you want to check it out and then give this a listen. But if you are listening to this, I imagine you probably have seen the movie and you probably enjoyed it. Obviously, as you'll be able to tell when you listen to this episode, I enjoyed it quite thoroughly ever since I was a child. But one thing that gets me, and it still gets me, even watching it recently, I bring it up on this episode, but the main thing that I want to talk about here is just how willing Nurse Jenny is to get in bed with David Naughton there, and just, you know, she's DTF right away, despite the fact that all he's been saying since he met her is that he thinks he might be a werewolf and he might be out killing people. And she's like, oh, okay, you want to go to bed? I mean, look, I understand it's a movie, and that wasn't one of the key plot elements that John Landis wanted to explore. It wasn't about the, emotional stakes involved in romance. But still, it is something that sticks out to me as wait a minute, why would she be into him kind of thing? She's got one line about it in the beginning. Anyway, we talk about it on the thing. So let me stop jibber jabbering. This episode is long enough as it is. This was actually the longest episode for quite a while. I think all the way up until maybe the 100th episode, which featured a couple topics and several guest co-hosts. So no wonder that one was longer. But this, for a long time, was the longest episode. Will it be outdone by our 200th episode, which is coming up, which I want to talk to you about? Okay, guys, so we are getting close to 200 episodes, and what I would like to do for episode 199 is take a look back at all the episodes that we have done in the past. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what are your favorite episodes. Of course, the show until very recently was known as Spooky AS, Spooky Ass Shit. So I want to know about those episodes, and tell me, what do you think was your favorite one? Give me 2 or 3 that you really enjoyed, and I'll make a list and I kind of talk about them on episode 199, maybe with some guests, maybe just myself, who knows. Episode 200, I got big plans for that one, don't worry. All right, so listen, this is the new name of the show, Spooky Times. I'm still getting used to it myself. I'm sure a lot of you are too. The name is new, but the website is old, spookyas.com. Go there. I'm probably not even going to bother buying yet another domain name, because I think I own 4 or 5 of these things by now, and I don't know how important it is. It doesn't seem like I get a lot of traffic based on the podcast there or anything, so I think if I just tell people, go to Spooky AS, that's pretty easy, and you can find it. So almost all the episodes are listed there, and you can also find links to our social media. For the time being, we are still at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram, but on Facebook, you've got to look for Spooky Times with Eric D. That's Eric with a C and the letter D. And of course, you can also join our secret closed group, the Spookaroos. Spooky Times with Eric D is open to the public. Spookaroos is closed, so that we can talk about nasty things that might not be safe for work, or, you might not want your family members to know that you spend a lot of time talking about Bigfoot conspiracy theories and stuff like that. So this way we can talk about these things without the weight of public judgment. Okay, enough of my jibber jabber. On with the show. Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Donnells, and my co-host tonight, returning once again, comedian Tom Cole.
Hey everyone. Hey Eric. Thank you for having me again.
Of course. Now, I'm always excited for every subject I cover.
Oh, of course.
But this one, I'm especially excited about.
Yeah, this one was near and dear to your heart when you mentioned it to me. I could see a glint in your eye when you mentioned it to me.
Yeah, tonight we're going to discuss American Werewolf in London. I wouldn't really consider this a review either. It's more like a
discussion.
Yeah.
An open forum.
A round table.
Yeah.
Between two people.
Between two people. a square, spooky-ass table.
Before we begin talking about the movie itself, my history with this movie goes back long before I ever saw it. And I think this is a pretty common experience for horror kids of a certain age.
Okay.
When we used to go to the video store, I used to go directly to the horror aisle.
Right.
And just stare at the VHS covers for all the different horror movies.
Uh-huh.
And there are some that stick out in my mind to this day.
What was that?
American Werewolf in London. What the VHS was basically a torso up shot of two young men backpacking. And they're just looking over their shoulder, but they look slightly afraid. Not horrified, but just nervous, like you can tell something bad might be about to happen, or they're suspicious of something. And it's like a foggy night, and they're under the full moon. That's the entire cover.
Right.
But as a little kid, I could read their facial expression, and I would say, what are they scared of? What's going to happen?
And isn't that what a cover is supposed to do?
Right. That's exactly right. And so it wasn't the scariest cover. It wasn't a big splashy cover. It didn't have a monster on it or anything, but it was in the horror section, and it's these two men looking over their shoulder. To me, as a child, that was even creepier, really.
Of course.
Because you don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, and I mean, the most horrifying thing as a child is their imagination.
Now, we'll talk about the movie, and I'll even talk about a little bit like how the movie was made and all that stuff. But you told me you don't have this kind of long history with the movie.
No, I had never heard of it before.
You'd never even heard of it?
I'd never even heard of it.
Oh, boy.
When you told me what it was, first off, the Warren Zevon song came to mind.
Right.
Oh, where was London?
Spot on.
Yeah, you guys all knew what the song was, but for those who didn't, I just sang it. But then I did find An American Werewolf in London, and I watched it. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
It was much...
That's the main thing.
It was much better than I expected.
We don't have to get too into it, but I just wanted to know if you even liked it, first of all.
Yeah, it was much better than I expected.
Yeah.
Much. A strong emphasis on the much.
All right, so before we begin to actually talk about the movie, I want to warn people, this might go long, because I have a lot to say about this movie. And not only that, but like watching it, knowing that I was going to be talking about it on the podcast, I watched it. It was like watching it with a different set of eyes. Like things that I just always took for granted.
Yeah.
I picked up on. And I was like, oh, wait, this is kind of weird that this happens.
And me, on the other hand,
I
watched it for the first time ever. I'm like, oh my God.
Tom is more prepared for this episode than he's ever been for any episode. He came with notes. He brought his own notes.
Yeah.
First of all, this movie was made by John Landis.
Yes.
Who is a very famous Hollywood director.
Yeah.
And we'll get into the movies he made in a second. But he started his life in the movies as a stuntman and an actor, doing like little bit parts in movies and assisting on movies and all that kind of stuff. So in 1969, he was in Yugoslavia working on a movie called Kelly's Heroes.
He was.
And during that time, they were filming in these rural locations in Yugoslavia.
Yep.
And they were driving down like a country road where they came to a crossroad and traffic was, stopped. So the driver got out to find out what's going on, and they could see what looked like movie gypsies, like fresh off the set movie, like real life gypsies.
Yeah.
Romani people.
Right.
Romani people. I would have said Romani right off the bat, but people wouldn't know what the fuck I was talking about, so I have to say gypsies. I'm sorry. It's considered a pejorative term.
It is.
And we will say Romani now that we're done talking about it, but now people know what we're talking about.
Romani.
The Romani people. They see these Romani, And what they're doing is they're burying a corpse in a vertical position, wrapped in linens and flowers and garlic.
Right.
In a very narrow little tomb at the crossroads.
Exactly.
And so they say, well, what do you, like, don't you have, like, you know, graveyards and stuff? And the Romani said, no, we do it this way, you know, because we don't want him to come back and cause trouble. Now, at that point, the folks in the car start to laugh because what do you mean, like, come back and cause trouble? What do you, like, he's a zombie? Like, he's going to come up and, you know, like, actually come back but they were serious, these Romani. So they drove off and laughed about it. But on the drive back, John Landis got to thinking, well, you know, we're laughing about it, but what if this did happen? Like, not just something that we're, like, to quote John Landis himself, not just something that we're unequipped to deal with, but something that's complete horseshit.
Right.
Like something that it can't happen. Well, what if it does? What if suddenly it's right in front of you? So that was his initial idea, and he wanted to make a movie based on that theme. And eventually he wrote the script for American Werewolf in London. Now, he wrote that script, and he told studios about it, but nobody was interested in it. They all read the script, and everybody liked it. Everybody agreed it was a good script. But they always said either it's too funny to be scary, or it's too scary to be funny. And they couldn't tell what kind of movie it was. Is this a horror movie or a comedy? In that time, he becomes friends with Rick Baker, who was a makeup artist. And really, he did what he termed special effects makeup. He did creatures. And he was working on John Landis's first directed movie, Schlock, where John Landis played like a gorilla man. And he was doing the makeup for it. So as he's putting the makeup on John Landis starts talking about this werewolf movie he wants to make. And his idea is, you know, in all the old werewolf movies, the transformation scene happens by like lap dissolves, and it's like really kind of cheesy looking.
Cheesy.
Even if
bad, yeah.
Yeah, even if the movie is good, the transformation scenes are always terrible.
You've all seen it. You've all seen the bad transformations.
Yeah.
And what John Landis and Baker wanted to do is just not that at all.
Right. Well, John Landis' idea, what he said, he wanted to do a scene with no cutaways. So they just film only the actual transformation.
Yep.
And in full bright light.
Yeah.
And Rick Baker was like, well, I guess I can try to think of a way to do that. It's never been done before, but I'll try to think of a way to do that. So years and years and years go by, and eventually John Landis gets a little clout to his name because he's made little movies like Kentucky Fried Movie, Animal House, and The Blues Brothers.
That's right. Yeah.
So now that he's got these hits under his belt,
he could do whatever he wants.
People are going to listen to him and make whatever movie he wants to make. So he says, I've got just the thing. So he calls Rick Baker and says, okay, Rick, we're finally going to do it. We're going to make our werewolf movie. Problem is, in all these years since, Rick Baker has already taken a job on another werewolf movie, The Howling. And John said, well, I can't believe you did this. Like, we had this, we agreed to do this movie. You're not using any of the effects that you came up with for our transformation scene, are you? And Rick Baker had to admit, yeah, I kind of am. So John Landis was furious, but Rick Baker said, well, don't worry, John. What I'll do is I'll have my assistant take over this movie, and I'll come and I'll work on American Werewolf.
Right.
And so that's how that came to be. And it's a good thing that he did, because the Academy Awards actually created the category of best special effects makeup, best makeup, for
the
American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
The transformation scene.
Absolutely. And this is the only John Landis movie that's ever gotten an Academy Award.
That is true. And he's got a string of, like, even after American Werewolf, Trading Places, and he's done a bunch of
some really good movies.
Yeah. Thriller, by the way. Both of these men got the job to direct and do the makeup for Thriller based off their work on American Werewolf in London. Michael Jackson called them personally to see if they'd do it. And that became the greatest music video of all time.
Yeah.
let's talk about American Werewolf in
talk
London.
about
This
it.
might be a two-parter, folks.
Hey,
We'll see.
Let's do what we got to do.
Yeah. First thing you see is like country roads. This is supposed to be the north of England.
Yep.
And you hear the song Blue Moon for the first time. It's not the only time you'll hear it in the film.
No. I did notice that. They played the song twice in the movie.
3 times.
3 times? All right, I
Yeah.
wasn't listening.
Yep. This is the Bobby Vinton version. But actually, the song he wanted to use for the opening sequence was Moonshadow by Cat Stevens.
Really?
Yeah. I'm being followed by a moon shadow. Moon shadow, moon shadow.
Beautiful.
Thank you. But Cat Stevens, by this point, had already converted to Islam.
Yeah.
And he didn't want his song associated with werewolves or anything occultic or anything like that. So he said no. Then he wanted to use the Bob Dylan version of Blue Moon. But Bob Dylan had also recently become super religious in a phase that would pass. But he also said no. So then he ended up going with the Bobby Vinton version of Blue Moon.
It's a good version.
Yeah,
I liked it.
Now, the first time we meet our hero and his friend, they're in the back of a truck with sheep.
Yes.
And as John Landis himself points out, this is not subtle. These are sheep being led to the slaughter. And the boys are in there with him.
Yeah, he kind of hit you over the head with this one.
Yeah. He's not known for his subtlety, and we'll see that
not so much, yeah.
throughout the movie. Now, the two boys, we have David Kessler, who's the star of the movie. He is played by David Naughton.
He is?
Yes. And he was known for this, before this movie, for a very famous Dr. Pepper commercial from the 70s. I'm a pepper, you're a pepper.
That's right.
You can look that up on YouTube or find it on Spooky Ass Shit if I can find a clip to post.
But I'm sure this is where you're going. He got fired from Dr. Pepper after this movie.
I did not have that written down, so that's
really?
good on you. Go ahead.
Yeah, he got fired from Dr. Pepper because he has a nude scene in this movie. So Dr. Pepper
Yeah, he's naked a few times, yeah.
Dr. Pepper thought that was a bit unsavory, and they fired him.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I guess you can't be a pepper and a wolf man.
You can't be a nude pepper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The other boy in this movie, well, they're, young men, I should say, is Jack Goodman. Griffin Dunn is the actor who plays Jack. He comes from a famous family. His father's Dominic Dunn. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, totally. Not at all.
It's okay. He was a famous crime writer, reporter. Okay. He had a TV show. He had several TV shows, but I think one of the last ones, like Power and Privilege with Dominic Dunn on, I forget, one of those like Court TV or ID or one of those channels.
Okay.
His sister was in The Poltergeist. As the gentleman who's driving them in the sheep truck drops them off, he tells them for the first time, keep off the moors.
Yes. State of the roads.
Yep. This is another thing we're going to hear over and over and over again.
Beware of the moon.
Yeah, that's another one. Beware the moon. Stay out of the moors. Now he drops them off, and they immediately go to a British pub called The Slaughtered Lamb. Again, not subtle.
Not even a little bit.
But when they get there, they look up at the sign, and it's an interesting sign because
there's not a lamb to be found on it.
There's no lamb. It's an impaled head of a wolf on a spike. Jack notices this and comments on it. But David just says, who knows? These British pubs are weird. Let's go inside. Right. And British pubs are weird, and they do have weird names.
They are, yeah. And it was a classic John Landis move that they walk in, and it's basically like the record player stopped. Everyone just stopped what they're doing and looked at them. Because wasn't that a scene in Animal House where they walk into the black club?
There's no record player in this place, but if there were, you know that would happen.
That would happen, yeah.
Yeah. Well, something like that does kind of happen in a little bit. All these people in the pub, all these locals to the town, one of them actually turns out to be rather famous. I'm not even sure if he has any dialogue in the movie. He's sitting there playing chess and dominoes. It's Rick Mayall, who you might know better as Drop Dead Fred.
Oh, okay.
He was also on The Young Ones, if anyone ever saw that show. He's done a few things, but here in America, he's mostly famous for Drop Dead Fred. Now, the two boys go in and they realize there's a pentagram on the wall, and David immediately associates that with the Wolfman, the Lon Chaney movie, because he would see the pentagram on the hands of his victims.
Yes.
The people who would be his victim. Which, that's not really a very recurring theme in werewolf movies. It's happened there, and there was a TV show in the 80s called Werewolf, where I believe it was a similar, I don't know if it was his hand would show the pentagram when he was going to change, or if one of his possible victims. It was something like that. I forget. It's been a long time since I've seen that show.
Right. Me personally, I didn't know a pentagram was associated with werewolves. I thought it was just like dark.
Yeah, because they're not really
magical in general.
Yeah. And they don't really get into it in the movie, even later on when they sort of explain what's happening in this town.
It's kind of on the surface.
Yeah. But it's a big red pentagram surrounded by candles.
And actually, if I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, they have a star on the wall. I wouldn't think a 5-pointed star. It's just a star.
But it was in red. It kind of looked like blood. Like it looked creepy.
Okay.
I would have been like,
yeah,
maybe not this place.
I mean, framed in a horror movie, yeah, that's a little weird. But that's how
I suppose
that's how I draw stars in general.
So then there's kind of a weird moment because one of the locals wants to tell a joke.
Yeah.
And everyone in the pub turns and is like, oh, no, not this again. Oh, here he goes again. Blah, 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 blah. And then he says he's not going to tell it. And they're like, oh, okay, go ahead and tell it. Go ahead and tell it. So clearly they've heard his jokes a million times.
Yes.
They've heard this joke a million times.
He's that guy.
So he tells his joke, which I guess just watch the movie if you want to hear it. But everybody, all the locals laugh like it's the goddamn funniest thing they've ever heard.
Told. Yeah.
And I said, aren't these the same people that 2 seconds ago didn't want to hear it and were to believe that they've heard this joke a million times?
See, I read it as they were kind of egging him on.
They were doing a reverse psychology teasing kind of thing?
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Maybe. All right. Makes more sense that way. I think he just needed a laugh to cover the next part, which is when Jack just yells, hey, what's that star on the wall for?
Yeah, and kills all the laughter.
And then we get our second silence. And this is where I said we have something like the record skip. The record doesn't skip, but the man throwing darts
misses the board.
Yeah. And he very intimidatingly says, you made me miss.
I never miss.
Yeah. He's a little guy, but he looks kind of scary in that moment.
Does.
He looks like he's going to kick some ass. And then they're told basically, like, look, we don't have any food for you here. And they more than a little imply that the boys are not welcome at the pub. The only one who seems concerned about the boys leaving is the bartender, who says, you can't let them go. You can't just send them out there.
Who's the only woman in the bar?
The joke teller is like, they'll be fine. And he tells them again, keep off the moors, beware the moon. Then they leave, and the dart player seems to soften a little bit because he turns and he says, it's murder if we send them out there.
He is guilt.
Yeah. And the joke teller basically says, well, if it's murder, then it's murder, but it's in God's hands now. It's not our problem. We don't need to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
But you can tell the whole place feels a little...
There's definitely they leave and there's an atmosphere of uncertainty if they did the right thing or just guilt washing over a lot of them.
So when they get outside, then that's when Jack starts to worry that the pentagram is maybe for something supernatural. And as they discuss this, and David kind of tosses it off and makes it seem like, it's, you just, what?
It's nothing.
Because again, like, they don't really believe in monsters or anything supernatural. They're two American boys and they're just...
backpacking.
Yeah. So they start to kind of joke about it. And as they do, they accidentally wander off the road and into the moors. And that's when they hear the howling of a werewolf.
That's right.
We guess it's a werewolf anyway, by the title of the movie. The boys hear the howl and joke about it at first. But then they see the moon. And they remember everyone's been telling them, beware the moon.
Right.
The boys decide they're going to turn back to the slaughtered lamb. But then they suddenly see the creature that's been howling. Now we as the audience don't see it. We just see the boys' reaction to it. And they just say basically, oh shit, what is it?
Yeah.
And their oh shits are not big over the top things. Because again, John Landis John Landis wanted to set this in like a realistic sense. So it'd be like if you were walking down the street and saw a really big dog, your immediate reaction probably isn't to scream
Right.
and run.
Yeah, you
it's
don't.
just like, oh shit, what is that?
Yeah, you don't think you're gonna get slaughtered in that moment.
Like you might have an issue here, but like, what the fuck is this thing?
Right.
But that's when David falls, and you think maybe he was attacked, but no, he just tripped.
Yeah.
So Jack laughs and says, "Oh man, you really scared me," and he reaches down to help him up, and
Werewolf comes out.
that's right, he gets jumped by the werewolf. David gets up and immediately runs away. But meanwhile, you can hear Jack being ripped to shreds.
Right. John Landis, he has no qualms about being gory.
No, it's actually, for the time, it's a pretty
Pretty
gory
gory.
film.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also considering that it's not like a slasher movie. Like, it's not that kind of tone to it at all. It's not Friday the 13th or something like that, where it's kind of built on the gore.
Yeah, I mean, he's not sloshing blood around, but he shows, like, deep wounds and...
Yeah. So because when David goes back to him, you can kind of see like his intestines or something. You see something exposed.
Right, yeah, it's hanging.
And you can see his face is ripped up and his throat has been removed. Now, that brings me to a question that I have about werewolves. Why do werewolves stop attacking? Like, what's the point of their killing?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it didn't seem like it's not for food. Or at least it didn't seem like it was for food.
No, because you would think if it's for food, then
he would have eaten it.
I mean, he'll eat, and then if something else comes near it, maybe he'll growl at it.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't necessarily get up and attack David.
No. I mean, is his goal just to kill or infect, or?
I guess it's to kill, because he goes and like and then when
mission accomplished.
Yeah. When the other werewolf appears, like he just goes around killing people too. They don't get into the question of why, the werewolf doesn't.
No, there was no werewolf philosophy in the movie.
David realizes he's being an asshole, leaving his friend to die in a wolf attack. So he turns around and he goes back. The wolf's gone, apparently, but he sees that Jack is all torn up, and he, has a little moment.
Yep.
A brief moment, because then, of course, the werewolf is there, and he jumps on David.
Launches himself, yep.
But he only takes a couple swipes before he's shot dead by the locals, which we see standing over him. They've come to the rescue with shotguns and whatever else.
The men from the slaughtered lamb, their guilt, really, it overcame them.
I have a question about that, too. The locals seemed obviously to know that there was a werewolf in town.
Yes.
But they never thought to go out and shoot it before now?
Oh, I didn't even think about that at all. Because they killed him pretty easy.
Yeah, so I'm not saying this is...
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm not saying this is a perfect movie. There are little, plot holes like this, but it's still a very good movie. So David survives his werewolf attack, and in the next scene, he is in the hospital. And you can see that he's got some marks on his face and his chest. So he was attacked, but not too severely. This is also when we meet Nurse Alex for the first time.
Mm.
Now, what are your thoughts to have some bro talk here?
All right. Sign me up.
Because I remember there was a phase in my life when I was trying to decide if I thought Nurse Alex was hot.
See, I think she's like a 1981 beauty.
My problem, I think, was that she just looked so serious in her nurse outfit.
Oh, that's the best part.
Like, her hair was up. I know, but I guess, again, keep in mind that I saw this before my, personal spring awakening, I guess. So I was seeing it without sexualizing her.
Yeah, see, I saw her, and I saw that her hair's tight and all that. I'm like, all right, girl, let your hair down. Let's see what you're like.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that now that I watched it now, I was like, oh, and especially with some stuff we'll get into later, she is hot. And not only that, but I Google searched the actress trying to find other pictures of her outside of the movie, because I was like, maybe she's just done up a certain way. She's pretty cute. You know what she actually reminds me of is Aubrey Plaza. Like a lighter haired.
A little bit, yeah.
Aubrey Plaza. Now, of course, another question here. Where are David's parents?
Well,
you would think.
We learn later they're on a trip.
Yeah, but still.
For 3 weeks?
He's been there for a month.
They wouldn't come see him?
And they don't come see him at all during the course of the movie. And even if they're on a trip, hey, your son was attacked. They think it's a maniac.
he-
They blame it on a lunatic, which we'll get into in a second.
He's in a coma.
He's in a coma. His best friend
Is
was
dead.
ripped to pieces in front of him. And the parents are like, oh, yeah, after we finish our cruise, we'll be right there. Is that what happened?
Fair point.
John Landis? Is that what
Fair
you're telling me?
point.
And then we get a representative from the U.S. Embassy.
Yes, Frank Oz.
Yes, who is played by none other than Frank Oz. Now, I don't know if that name's familiar to you or not, but the voice, when you watch the movie, will definitely be familiar because it sounds just like Bert.
See, that's not who I was picking up. All I could hear was Fozzie Bear.
Okay, Fozzie Bear.
That's all I could hear was Fozzie.
Yeah, well, the reason for that is he did the voice of both Bert and Fozzie Bear. He did the puppetry for both Bert and Fozzie Bear and Miss Piggy.
He sure did.
And many, many other
he was
Muppets throughout the time. He was
very important member of...
one of the original Muppeteers.
Yes.
In the Jim Henson Company.
Yep. He's done a lot. That's a different conversation, but he's had one hell of a career.
He sure has. He's really only in there for that little bit, and he's like super insensitive. Actually, the entire time that he's talking to him, he's like, Mr.
Cold.
Kessler, settle down. Mr. Kessler, by the way, has literally just found out that his friend is dead. Like the sentence before.
Right.
He found out his friend is dead and that he's been in a coma for 3 weeks. And that they think it was a lunatic.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Give him a moment. Let him
And
breathe
meanwhile, Frank Oz's character is like, I know you're upset, but please, let's be rational and civilized.
But please.
Yeah. And then he walks out, and his big line at the end was, dumbass kids, never appreciate anything you'd do for them. Now that's the big joke because, of course, he's associated with Sesame Street and Muppets and all that.
Exit Frank Oz.
Yeah. The doctor fills him in and says that it was a lunatic that attacked him, not a werewolf. David says that he's starting to worry about his sanity. Then we get a little look at the budding romance between him and Nurse Alex. So the doctor also fills in David that his wounds were cleaned and dressed before he even got to the hospital. So this brings up another question that I have, which is sort of addressed later in the movie, but not really. Why did the locals let him live? They killed the werewolf, but let the guy who was attacked by the werewolf live. Now, presumably we know that they know that he's going to become a werewolf.
Of course they know, yeah.
So why didn't they shoot him too?
Do you think maybe they just had so much guilt just letting them out in the wild anyways? But
maybe they just hoped it wasn't enough damage.
But they got him off to London, so like, you know what? It's their problem now. He's not coming back to the...
I don't know. These people are shady.
Yeah, that is shady, but it's... I mean, they live in Northern England. What do you want?
This is when we get the first appearance of Dead Jack. Now, the first time Jack appears, he looks pretty much the way he did last time we saw him. So he's all cut up. His face is slashed. His neck is pretty much completely missing. Yeah. He's got this gross dangly bit kind of hanging off his face onto his neck that wiggles when he talks.
And we mentioned earlier that this movie received a special Academy Award for the makeup in it. So it's actually... I thought it was going to be pretty lame. It was actually pretty impressive, especially
it still holds
by
up.
1981 standards, and it definitely holds up 35 years later.
And the thing is, too, like this is a scene that is brightly lit.
Yeah. So
it's not like Rick Baker had, a trick that he could hide it in, the dark part of the screen. It's fully lit.
Yeah, they're not fooling anyone.
Yeah.
They sought out for excellence, and they got it.
Obviously, at first, David is a little freaked out, but Jack reassures him, and he kind of jokes about going to his own funeral, and so David relaxes a bit. And David still doesn't really think he's real. He kind of is like, okay, this is just another weird dream or hallucination that I'm having. It'll pass. It'll be fine, but I'll just kind of go along with it. But that's when Jack basically has a come to Jesus talk with him. Which means look, no, this is real. This is a real thing that's happening. And by the way, you're a werewolf now. So the full moon's going to be here in a couple days. So you need to get your shit together and kill yourself
Right.
before you hurt anybody.
Yeah.
Because once the bloodline of the werewolf ends, the curse will be lifted. And you're now the person who has the curse. So once you're dead, I can finally rest in peace. And so can all the other people who have been murdered previously, I suppose. Because according to the rules of this movie, if you die an unnatural death, you're not allowed to rest in peace.
Right.
Until the curse is lifted, I suppose. Then Nurse Alex comes in, and Jack is gone. She doesn't see him. But Jack even kind of reacts to hearing the nurse coming down the hall. So you sort of know he is, like, in the real world.
Yeah.
Even though he's apparently got powers that he can, like, turn himself off or whatever and disappear. But he does hear her, so he's kind of like, oh, shit. Like, he kind of makes a face like that. So she comes in and he's gone. So David tells the nurse, like, hey, I just saw my dead friend. And she convinces him that it was all just a dream again. And then she invites him to stay at her place.
Yeah, which was very friendly of her.
It was very friendly. However, this man just told you he sees his dead friend and also that I'm a werewolf.
Oh, yeah. Definitely too friendly. For sure. Yeah.
That's my point. So, again, bro talk here.
Well, she just wants some of that the big American D.
She clearly does. It gets even worse later on, but yes.
Yeah.
She clearly does. And that is how you can tell, I think, that this movie was written by a dude.
Of course, yeah.
Because this is a total male fantasy.
Yeah, she just gives it up, and
it's really funny how you can pick things out sometimes. I mean, this is pretty blatant, and you know, like I don't want to get into a whole discussion about feminism and all that stuff, but like when I first saw, I had a friend who was super into Mad Men.
Okay.
And she was like, "You got to watch Mad Men. You got to watch Mad Men." And I watched it, and it was, you know, I didn't have a problem with the show or anything, but I watched like the whole first season, and I was like, "Is it written by a woman?" And my friend was like, yeah, how'd you know? And I was like, because it's a total female fantasy. Even though it's about, like, a dude cheating and all this stuff, like, it's written in such a way that, like, well, he does it, but you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is a total female fantasy. This is not, like, this is not how, like, dudes work. That's not how guys are. So, reverse of that, here in this movie, we see the nurse who's, like, has really nothing to base this on other than, like, she's joked around with him a few times.
Nope,
and otherwise, all he said is crazy-ass shit.
Yeah.
About, like, being attacked by a wolf.
Absolutely.
Now I'm a werewolf. My friend is dead.
Now come to my place.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, you want to come over? You want to...
Yeah, just stay here.
Just stay with me? You got nowhere else to be? Forget going home to his family after his coma and near-death experience and the death of his friend. Forget all that.
Yeah, no. Who needs that?
He's just going to stay in London.
Who needs that?
Yeah. He goes and stays with Nurse Jenny.
He does.
And he immediately notices that there's only one bed.
Know what that means.
And he points this out. He says, oh, there's only one. And it's a twin-size bed, by the way. It's really small. It's weird. Yeah. But he notices there's only one bed. And then the Nurse Alex just makes it clear.
She lays down the law.
Yeah.
She does what every guy wants a woman to do.
She's like, well, listen, I'm not in the habit of bringing American men home. I've had 7 lovers, 3 of which were one-night stands. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then she's like, I find you terribly attractive. I'm going to go take a shower now. They have a sex scene here.
And can I say, sex scenes have come a long way.
Yeah, there's a lot of back rubbing in this one.
Yeah, like, she's like softly nibbling his shoulder, but like, very gentle.
And as a kid, obviously, again, like, I just kind of took it for granted that there were sex scenes in movies, and I, like, whatever. But now I'm like, man, Nurse Alex is a good sport.
Yeah. And she's a champion.
Yeah. So again, she's only gotten hotter as the years have gone on in my eyes. So after they fuck, David goes to the bathroom. And he's looking at himself in the mirror, and he goes to close the medicine cabinet mirror. And of course, when he does, in the corner is revealed Jack once again. Only this time, he's a little bit greener. He's decaying. Every time we see him, he gets a little bit more decrepit, more decayed. And he, again, it's another bright light scene. At least this time David says, can we go into the living room, please? You're creeping me out in here. And they go to the living room and they keep the lights off intentionally so that David doesn't have to see Jack full ghouly figure. And then There's the Mickey Mouse figure that I want to point out.
There's several.
Well, yeah, she's got a lot of Disney stuff, which lends credibility to the Americana fixation that she might have.
Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe she's just super into like everything American.
It could be,
but she wants some Star-Spangled Dick.
Yes, eloquently put. Yeah, she had 2 Mickey Mouses, 1 Minnie Mouse, and 1 Donald Duck.
Wow,
Yeah,
you were really paying attention.
I was really paying attention.
Guess so.
You don't get a Mickey Mouse past me.
No hidden Mickeys here. But yeah, so Jack picks up the Mickey Mouse figure and does a little "Hi, David" with the Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Which isn't like a big thing in the movie, except obviously it's supposed to be a little bit funny and unnerving because it's a corpse picking up Mickey Mouse.
Yep.
But that figure's going to come to play later on, and something I want to point out. Jack tells him tomorrow night's the full moon, and he stays on message that he's been saying all this time, which is basically kill yourself. And then he disappears again. Now, Nurse Alex comes onto the scene, and David again tells Nurse Alex what Jack said.
Yeah, he doesn't play it cool at all.
No,
like he just laid down some pipe, and
Yeah.
you'd figure he'd be like, "All right, I can keep this one to myself." Nope, he lays it out on the line, being like, my dead friend came. He told me to kill myself, and I'm gonna be a werewolf.
yeah, tomorrow's the full moon.
Yeah.
I'm going to hurt people, blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about, I think a werewolf can only be killed by someone who loves him. And he's like laying on all this stuff.
Oh yeah,
She is completely nonplussed.
she's so cool about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
In the meantime, the doctor from the hospital, the doctor who's been treating David, Dr. Hirsch, he goes to investigate David's crazy story and find out what happened and why his wounds were clean and dressed before he got to the hospital and what kind of man could have done the damage that they saw on the friend. So he goes to the slaughtered lamb, but the locals claim to know nothing about any attacks at all, even the lunatic attack.
They're giving the doctor the welcome that they gave the 2 boys.
Yeah.
Just very cold.
Yeah. And then the doctor asks about the pentagram, and and they say, "Oh, it's just been there for 200 years, and we thought about replacing that wall, but it's just
But
tradition,
history.
so
Yeah.
we leave it." So the doctor leaves, but he's met outside by the dart player from the opening of the movie.
Yep.
In a graveyard, who basically tells him, without explicitly saying exactly what's happening, he basically says, like, there's a curse on this town, that boy's in trouble, everyone who knows him is in trouble, there's a full moon coming. So he doesn't explicitly say, like, he's a werewolf, he's going to turn, and, he's going to kill everyone.
But he basically spills the beans.
He does, and he's probably going to say a lot more stuff, but then the joke teller comes out and yells at him, so he runs off, literally runs away like a scared puppy, and the doctor's just left standing there getting mad-dogged by the joke teller.
Yes.
And the doctor leaves. So Alex goes to work. Nurse Alex goes to work, leaving David alone. And we get a little montage of animals not liking David.
Yep.
Hissing or growling.
Dogs,
or
cats.
barking.
Yep.
Then we have the famous transformation scene.
We do, and it's pretty good, folks.
This is the second time we hear the song Blue Moon.
Okay, yeah.
I believe, I didn't look it up, but I believe this is a Sam Cooke version. Sounds like Sam Cooke.
It is Sam Cooke, yeah.
Yeah. And now something interesting here. Again, everything we talked about earlier for the transformation scene, bright lights. They didn't want to do any cutaways. They did cuts, like different, so you could see different parts of the body, but they didn't want to do cutaways where you look at something completely different and then you come back and, oh, now he's suddenly half transformed or something like that.
Right.
With one exception. There is one cut, which I'll get to in a second. But he also wanted this to look painful because your body is stretching and morphing. There's a big debate between Rick Baker and John Landis as to whether this was going to be a werewolf on 2 legs or a werewolf on 4 legs. John Landis wanted 4 legs. Rick Baker wanted 2 legs.
John Landis won.
He won because he's the director. And technically, if you're on 2 legs, in my book, that makes you a wolf man.
That's true.
If you're on 4 legs, you're a werewolf.
True.
So,
Bam.
yeah. Although I do prefer Wolfman, I suppose.
I'm a purist. I'm for werewolves. 4 legs.
Yeah. And he wanted to look painful because your bones are reshaping and stretching and all this stuff, and
it shows that the hands and the feet actually stretching out, and
Yeah.
it looks very painful.
Yeah, they called those change-o body parts. That's what he decided to name them, Rick Baker. There's one cut in the scene, because otherwise they just keep showing different parts of David. But at one point, they do cut to the Mickey Mouse figure.
They do.
And it just looks like Mickey's kind of watching over this transformation. And he kind of looks like, what the fuck? Like, even though it's just a little figure, it kind of does look like that's expression.
It
like,
really
this is
does,
fucking
yeah.
weird. And as an adult, that's how I see it. As a kid, it was even creepier. Because you're taking, and I'm sure that he did this on purpose, but it hit a child's psyche much harder than it hits my adult psyche.
Right.
That this is like supposed to be a friendly cartoon, happy thing. And it's in the middle of this terrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have much to say about it, just except that...
It's an interesting point.
Yeah. Just imagine seeing it. I must have been younger than I originally said, because I was probably more like 7 or 8 when I saw it.
Maybe you were just innocent until you were like 13.
Yeah. So Dr. Hirsch comes back to London, where Nurse Alex is still on duty. And he says, look, I went to the town where this attack happened, and I can tell that all the locals are lying and they're hiding something. He starts to believe David's story. He doesn't believe that David is a werewolf, but he believes that David has become deranged and that he may be harmful to himself and others. They call the apartment, but David doesn't answer because he's too busy being a werewolf at this point. Then we have the subway attack.
Yes.
Now, the subway attack, to me, is one of the coolest scenes in the movie. And what's cool about the subway attack is that you don't see the monster. Again, you just see the man reacting to the monster. It's kind of shot from the wolf's point of view, I guess. Because you see the man get out, and he's alone. It's a very abandoned...
It is.
Subway. And he sees it, and he starts to run from it. But, of course, he trips on the escalator. So he's kind of like lying on the escalator, and he turns around to see if he's still being followed. And that's the first time that you really get a look at David as the wolf.
Yeah, he's at the bottom. It's long.
Right.
It's a long
like
shot.
an overhead shot.
It's a long overhead shot.
Yeah, and you only see about 3/4 of the wolf. But you can just see that it's really big. It's just a little glimpse. Just a little brief glimpse.
Yes. So in total that night, though, David kills 6 people. 3 hobos, a couple on the way to a dinner party, and then the man in the tram. Tram? What's the word for it?
Subway.
Subway.
Tube, I guess.
In the tube.
Yeah. If you're in London, they call it the tube. We call it the T. David wakes up in the zoo the next day.
Nude and in the pen with 2 wolves.
That's right. And he just basically, you can see that he must have smashed his way in through the top, and he kind of just climbs his way back up that way. Then he steals balloons from a boy, and he thank goodness.
Steals the coat from a lady.
Oh, yes. No, but he steals the balloons from the boy, and he runs away with them. And the boy smiles. But I'm having trouble reading the subtext of that smile.
Yeah.
This is a weird thing to point out, but go back and look at this boy. I'll put a still of it on spookyashit.com. But I can't tell, like, is the smile because, like, hey, it's funny that, like, a naked man just stole my balloons? Or is it like a, good move, naked man. You got those balloons fair and square. Or is it like a, nice ass, naked man?
I'm going to go with the second one. I'm going to go with, well played, naked man.
Yeah.
Well played. You lured me over here, and then you stole my balloons.
Yeah. So he steals a woman's coat, and he basically wears that home. He stole the balloons to cover up his nudity, but then he found the coat, so he found that to be a better cover-up. David gets back to Alex's. He doesn't remember what happened the night before. Not even the transformation.
Nope.
So that's kind of convenient. At least if you're going to have to suffer through all that, you don't remember it the next day.
Yeah.
And actually, he feels really, really good.
Yeah.
And he does tell her that he woke up in the zoo and everything.
But he says it's the best he's felt
Right.
in weeks.
And once again, Nurse Alex does not give a shit about any of this.
No.
She's just like, "Oh, I was a little worried.
Hey,
I'm glad you're fine."
Welcome back into my home.
Yeah. Man who's been swearing up and down that he's a werewolf, talking about seeing his dead friend,
and woke up with wolves.
left in the middle of the night, apparently broke into the zoo and slept in a wolf cage.
And all he's wearing is a coat.
Oh boy. Okay, so that's the
Some
major,
red flags.
That's the major plot hole with this movie is just Alex, the character of Alex herself.
Yeah,
she's willing to overlook a lot.
She's not entirely well thought out as a character. She's just kind of there to move the storyline.
A lot to get to that Washington Monument, if you know what I'm saying. Just gonna keep making American Dick references. All right. So the doctor calls and tells Alex to bring David to the hospital. And again, David is just expressing how great he feels and blah, blah, blah. But she's like, "Oh, we'll go and see what Dr. Hirsch wants." Then they get in the car. They get into a taxi. And the taxi driver, first of all, drops a reference to Sweeney Todd, which I appreciate. Then he tells them about 6 murders the night before. And that's when David loses his shit. Because he realizes, oh, that was probably me.
Yeah.
That's probably what I was out doing last night. So he jumps out of the taxi. He runs into Trafalgar Square. And he starts to try to get himself arrested because he's freaking out saying, you know, the moon's going to come back tonight. I guess it doesn't have to be a completely full moon because the full moon only lasts one night, right?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I don't know much about moon cycles, so maybe I'm wrong.
I don't either. I thought it was full for one day.
And then it goes to
you work your way to it,
yeah.
and then you work your way back away from it.
I guess it just has to be mostly full.
I guess.
I don't know. Whatever it is, it's still got enough power to transform him. So he tries to get himself arrested so that he'll be in a cage because he doesn't even want to be around Alex or Dr. Hirsch or anyone that he knows because he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just wants to be locked up. So he tries to get himself arrested. He calls Prince Charles a fag in an attempt to get arrested.
He sure does.
Which will come up later on. But the police won't arrest him, no matter what. Then he tells Alex that he loves her, but that it's unsafe to be around him, and he just runs away. Alex goes to the doctor, and he calls the police. The police don't believe the werewolf story, but they say they'll go out looking for David. David calls home from one of the famous red phone booths in London. In the phone booth, David attempts to slit his wrist.
But turns out he's a pussy.
Yeah, and he's only got a pocket knife, so it actually would be kind of hard to do.
Yeah, that would be really just a painful thing to do.
And he was going to do it the wrong way anyway.
Rather than
aren't you supposed to go?
You go up the street, not across the street, right?
Yeah.
Or do I have it wrong?
No, that's right. You're supposed to go vertical, not horizontal.
I've never tried to kill myself, so I don't know.
Yeah, don't do it. If you're out there, don't do it.
Yeah, seek help.
From the phone booth, he turns and he sees Jack standing in the porn theater entranceway.
Yep.
And so he goes into the porn theater because he knows that Jack kind of just waved him over.
Yes.
Now, interesting thing about the porn movie, you see the poster and you see it when you get in there, is that it's called See You Next Wednesday.
I noticed that too.
Yeah. Now, the thing about See You Next Wednesday is that's sort of an inside joke for John Landis fans because anytime there's a movie reference in any of his movies, the movie is called See You Next Wednesday. It's not always a porn movie, but that's what it is. Even in Thriller, if you watch Thriller, when Michael is sitting there with his date, you can hear the movie. They're like, I don't know if they're talking about a killer or something. They say, what does the note say? And you can hear one of the offstage, movie actor voices going, "See you next Wednesday." So, and then outside on the poster, I think there's a poster for Schlock, which is the first movie that him and Rick Baker met on, and then there's a poster for See You Next Wednesday. Anyway, back to American Werewolf. In the theater, we see Jack that he's basically like a skeletal corpse now. He's actually a puppet in real life at this point, because he's so decayed. But he hasn't come alone this time.
Nope.
He's brought all of David's victims from the night before.
All 6 of them.
And they're all pretty pissed. With one exception.
The couple.
Yeah. Especially, I even wrote her name down, Judith Brown, who is one of the people in the couple who's been killed. She is super chipper.
Oh, she's awesome.
And
I love her.
They discuss ways how he should kill himself.
Yeah.
And she turns. Go ahead.
Doesn't she suggest he gets a gun and points it right to his head?
Yeah.
You can't miss.
Yeah. And she looks so chipper while she does it. It might be like my favorite performance in the movie.
This was my favorite.
Like she's very captivating.
This was my favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just funny.
Yeah.
This is...
And dark, too, because like the subway guy's like...
This was definite dark humor.
Jack is your friend. He brought us here to warn you. We are not your friends. We are your victims. We, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, absolutely. It's very clear who they are to him, what they want
Yeah, he
David
talks about,
to do.
like, I had a wife and child and, blah, blah, blah. And
But I think this is especially where John Landis towed the line of, is it a horror film or is it a comedy? So this was especially dark comedy.
So then David changes into a wolf in the theater. And that is when we basically really get our first good look at the monster because people come in, one man gets attacked, and then the woman who owns the theater presumably comes in and sees the werewolf and runs out screaming.
Yeah.
A Bobby cop goes in to search the theater and see what's going on.
And you get a full
look. And in
look.
his flashlight, or torch, as they would say in jolly old England, you get a look at the wolf.
Yeah.
For the first time.
This is the one thing that does not hold up for me.
The look of the wolf itself?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not super happy with it myself.
It looks like a dog in a bear costume.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird. I was looking through actually John Landis's book Monsters in the Movies at pictures of other werewolves in movies, and I'm not super happy with any of them. I don't know what I want from a werewolf.
Yeah.
But I guess most of them
just not that.
Aren't and this one didn't do it for me either. And he says that he based it on his dog actually, Rick Baker.
Oh, that's funny.
His Keyshound. Which I didn't know what a Keyshound was. I had to look it up. It sort of looks like a off-color small husky.
Okay.
But it does you can see it. You can see the,
Oh, definitely. It's very doggy.
Yeah.
But it just really bothered me that the transition scene was done so well, and you kind of...
Like so much of the movie
they're not
done
even
so well.
the same shape. Like, from the transition, you get an idea of what shape he is. And then, then you see the werewolf in the movie theater, and it's like... Well, first off, you're a lot shorter than was originally portrayed. You're like just a mound of whatever. You're not really the shape you would think of. And then the face, it just looks stupid.
Yeah. So anyway, after the cop sees that, he runs out of the theater and shuts like the steel barricade that they would put down at closing time, presumably.
Yep.
And you can see the wolf is trying to get out. He's banging up against it and little denting it. And the cop is freaking out, saying, there's a monster in there. He literally says a monster.
Calling the other cops over.
Yeah, and he's saying bring rifles and shotguns, and like they're finally taking this seriously. But the wolf breaks out of the theater and he literally bites the head off a dude.
He sure does. It goes a little bit over the top at this point.
Yeah. You see the head bounce off the hood or bonnet of a car. I'm trying to speak, British. And roll into the street. And it's again, this isn't really like a gore slasher kind of movie, but it's got little elements.
Someone gets hit by a car in this scene, and that's John Landis's cameo.
That's right.
In the movie.
And every time he talks about it, he talks about how he gets hit by a car and he goes through a plate glass window. But if you watch it, what actually happens is he gets hit by a car and he backs up into a plate glass window and hits with his arm a woman standing next to him. And she goes through the plate glass window.
Yeah.
So he's kind of exaggerating.
Yeah, she takes
his
the brunt
role
of
a
it.
bit. Yeah. He just falls down. She goes through the window. His arm might have gone through. Yeah. Dr. Hirsch, in the next scene, tells Alex that there's been reports of a mad dog in Piccadilly Circus. Americans who don't know, don't get excited. Piccadilly Circus is not actually a circus. I was really let down too. So they run to the scene. And at this point, the police have cornered the dog, what they think is a mad dog, on a dead-end street. Alex is able somehow to fight her way through the police to get to David the Wolf.
Yes.
And she tries talking to him.
She confesses her love.
She finally says, I love you.
Because they've known each other for so long.
To David. Yeah.
Yes.
And you see a close-up of the wolf's eyes, which are like snarling and narrow and stuff, and then she says, "I love you," and they kind of soften and open up. So you think, oh, we're going to get a nice happy ending
around.
here.
Yeah.
It's finally like she's going to tame the beast. Nope, because he immediately snarls back and apparently goes to jump at her, but all the police who have super good aim shoot around Alex.
Yeah, I just thought that too. Yeah.
And shoot the wolf.
She was fine, everyone.
Yep, she was fine. She starts to cry.
But
we look over and we see
David.
Naked David.
Not the wolf.
Shot up on a pile of trash. And immediately cut to a very snappy version of Blue Moon by the Marcells. It's our third version. So this is like a black doo-wop group singing it. This is the one that starts with the bomb ba bomb dang 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 ding dong ding Blue Moon. That one.
Yeah.
That was a spot on
You nailed it.
impersonation too.
I've never heard a better one.
Yeah.
You're better than the...
So that is another little joke John Landis does of like, oh hey, we just like fucked with your head for a while and now like
Then they
here's
just
a happy
end the
little
movie.
tune.
That's it.
Yeah. And during the credits, we see a special congratulations to Prince Charles and Princess Diana at the very end.
Now, I read that he put that in as it's kind of like an apology for calling him a faggot earlier in the movie.
Yeah, and that's the legend. But because when the movie was being made, the wedding wasn't happening yet. But as they were finishing production, like, editing and all that stuff, they had announced the wedding. And they were like, oh, like, it was nice of them to let us film in their country. And, he's going to be king someday. So I guess we should.
Yeah, we should say thank you.
Yeah, just
instead
let
of
him know,
calling
like, hey,
him-
we were just joking around.
Yeah,
Don't-
that whole fag thing. We didn't
Yeah.
really mean it.
And he was trying to get arrested at that point. It's not like
He was, yeah.
Any thoughts, any takeaways for you?
No, like I said, this was the first time I had ever heard of the movie. I had ever seen the movie. And I just knew it was from 1981. And I'm like, man, I'm going to get through it. Eric likes it, so I'm going to go in with an open mind. It was way better than I thought it would be. It was funny at parts. It was scary at parts. It was way better done, the special effects and the makeup than you would ever think 1981 could deliver. It was just a solid movie. I mean, just beyond any genre, beyond whether it's a horror movie or a horror movie or just a comedy. It was just a movie that was really well done, that had a lot of scenes with really good writing in it, that just had very subtle things to latch on to, both scary and comedy wise. I mean, one scene that I really liked that we didn't talk about was the scene in the doctor's office and the two investigators. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of physical comedy and just subtle
That's
status.
like comes out of nowhere.
There was a lot of status comedy
There's
in
some
it.
slapstick.
Yeah,
like
it didn't really add to the movie at all, but it was just well done.
Yeah.
So all in all, I've really enjoyed the movie.
Well, I'm glad you did. See, I wouldn't recommend a movie if it was bad. Well, I might recommend it because it's so bad.
Oh, of course, that's a different story, though.
But like, this is one of the seminal movies of my like childhood, and this and Lost Boys. Like, those were my like, and Children of the Corn.
Yeah.
Those were like my go-to, like when I was a kid, horror movies, and Child's Play.
Yeah.
Like I said, I recommend this movie for just about everybody. Only I think the most uptight and squeamish of people wouldn't find something to enjoy about it.
Right. Yeah, folks, it's not gory. If you haven't seen it, go see it.
It is gory.
Well, no, I
But
mean,
not
it's not like way, way, way over the top. It's not going to make you poop your pants.
It's
so
gore that makes
scary.
sense. There's no like gushing blood. Like nobody
Yeah.
like.
It's not like a Quentin
Yeah.
Tarantino, like someone gets their head ripped off and then it's like spraying blood everywhere. It's not make you jump out of your seat scary. Definitely get your nerves going at points, but it's just well done. Go see it. Go see it. Don't be like
Rush out to theaters.
Don't be
and
like
see it 35
don't be
years
like
ago.
me 2 days ago and having not seen it. Go see it. Do yourself a favor.
Have a screening party with friends.
Yeah.
Or find a local theater to try to get it to run.
Yeah. And guys, go to Great Britain. Go to the hospital. Find a nice nurse. She will take you home that day.
Well, that's the thing. I'm wondering if I try this in real life. Like maybe not even going to Great Britain. Maybe the American angle might be the thing.
Oh yeah.
But it could also just be that she's into like Wolfman.
But she didn't know he was a wolf man at that point.
Well, he mentions it several times though.
That's true. Before they go home.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah.
So I might just be like, oh, like I'm really sorry. Like I'll just like drop a drink or something. Be like, oh, I'm so uncoordinated.
Yeah.
What with my wolf hands? I mean, human hands.
Yeah. My American human hands.
One more thing I want to talk about with American Werewolf in London. I mentioned that when I was a kid, I used to stare at the cover of the VHS, which was the two boys looking over their shoulder up at the moon with the fog, and you wonder, what do they look nervous about? What's chasing them?
Yeah.
What's behind them? Well, when they did the DVD release of the movie, they didn't go with that design. They went with
the werewolf.
Yeah, and actually, it's not even the full werewolf. This is one of the change-o heads that you see pictured.
Yeah.
With the skyline of England, with the skyline of London
Just
in the background.
in the back, yeah.
Yeah. And I really don't like it.
No, it really doesn't do the movie justice. I think, we were talking, the first one was great because it invites you into the story. It really gets your imagination going. With this, it's just like, all right, it's about a werewolf, and it's about a poorly made up werewolf.
Yeah,
the werewolf doesn't even look good
because he's supposed to be in the middle of changing.
Yeah,
and like we said, it's. I believe that this isn't David Naughton. This is one of the change-o heads.
Yeah.
So, and it's like a close up of basically just the mouth. The eyes are closed. I don't know. And then the like little quote that they have on it is dynamic direction and script. Well, yeah,
it's lame,
but you can find better quotes.
It's a lame cover
about the movie. I'm happy to say that for the Blu-ray release,
they went back to the original.
Well, sort of. It's a different image of the two, but they're still looking off camera at something that you don't know what it is. And now they've included
There's more London.
They've included the London background, which I think actually takes away from it. I still prefer the VHS cover. It was so simple, so effective.
Yes.
We don't need Big Ben. You don't actually see Big Ben in the movie at all.
You don't.
They're in Trafalgar Square, so if they had turned the camera around, they would have seen Big Ben. But, no, I like it better with... Oh, you know what I didn't notice? On the Blu-ray, there's a wolf face in the moon. I don't like that.
Oh, there is.
It's real subtle.
It is, yeah, I see, yeah.
Yeah. I don't care for that. Because now it sort of looks like David Naughton's looking up at the moon. Yeah, I don't care for that. All right, so never mind. The original VHS is still...
It's number one.
The best cover.
And folks, everyone listening out there, go to spookyas.com and please rate us on iTunes. And if you have any questions, where can they send questions to, Eric?
spookyasshit@gmail.com.
Bam.
All right. Thanks again, Tom Cole. And we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Beware the moon. Stay on the roads. And until next time, don't be afraid.
Spooky Times is a Witchfinder production.